It's 1957. No smartphones, no front cameras, just pure creativity. Look closely. This young man is taking what we'd now call a selfie. But instead of a sleek phone, he's holding a wooden pole attached to an old film camera, carefully balancing the shot. Every detail here screams ingenuity. The focus, the angle, the determination in his eyes. In a world without filters or instant likes, this photo wasn't about going viral. It was about capturing a moment that truly mattered. And guess what? Nearly 70 years later, it still does. Think about it. Has technology really made us more creative or just more impatient? 1948, a time when women were expected to stay in the kitchen, but these women had other plans. Look at their focus, their stance, training with revolvers as the first wave of female officers in the LAPD. Every shot they fired wasn't just a bullet. It was breaking through decades of stereotypes. Think about the courage it took to step into a male-dominated world and demand respect. They weren't just practicing aim, they were aiming for equality. And thanks to women like them, the badge doesn't care about gender anymore. Would you have had the guts to stand on that line back then? 1940. At first glance, it looks like just a group of friends posing for a photo, but look closer. These young women weren't just hanging out, they were making history. They were protesting a school dress code that banned girls from wearing pants. Sounds ridiculous today, right? But back then, this simple act was an act of rebellion. Each smile hides a quiet storm of defiance. They weren't asking for fashion freedom. They were demanding equality, comfort, and the right to choose. And guess what? Their courage paved the way for the everyday freedoms we take for granted. Would you have dared to stand with them when the world said no? Paris, 1865. You're walking through the quiet streets, and then you see this. A strange metal structure standing proudly in the middle of the sidewalk. It's not art. It's not a monument. It's a public urinal. Yes, this was 19th century innovation, an attempt to bring hygiene and order to a city drowning in chaos. These open-air stalls gave men a place to relieve themselves, right in public view, because indoor plumbing was still a luxury. For Parisians, this was modern progress. For us today, it's a shocking reminder of how far urban life has come. Would you dare use one of these on a busy street? Imagine digging in your backyard and finding this, a Ferrari. Yes, in 1978, two kids in Los Angeles struck what looked like a treasure buried in the dirt, a 1974 Ferrari Dino 246 GTS. Who buries a car worth tens of thousands of dollars? Police were called. The neighborhood swarmed with cameras, and the mystery deepened. Investigators discovered the car had been reported stolen years earlier, likely part of an insurance scam. But here's the twist. Despite years underground, the Ferrari was still in decent shape. It was cleaned, restored, and eventually sold for a fortune. Just think, what secrets could be hiding under your own backyard? It looks like something out of a horror movie, but this was real, a guillotine standing tall on a remote island in New Caledonia, 1911. Built for one purpose, swift execution. Imagine the silence of the crowd, broken only by the creak of wood and the chilling sound of a blade sliding down. The guillotine was seen as humane compared to older methods, but for those who faced it, mercy was just an illusion. This photo captures the brutal reality of justice a century ago. Hard to believe this machine once symbolized law and order. Would you dare to stand this close to it? In 1974, this woman shattered a barrier no one thought would break. Her name? Mary Wallace, the first female bus driver for the Chicago Transit Authority. Back then, driving a bus was seen as a man's job, tough, demanding, and absolutely off-limits to women. But Mary didn't just drive a bus. She drove straight through decades of discrimination. Imagine the stares, the whispers, the doubt. And yet, she rolled through the city streets with pride, proving strength isn't about gender, it's about grit. This single photo marks a turning point in history. What would you say to Mary if you could meet her today? This photograph was taken in Mexico, 1935, but it tells a story that echoes through decades of silence. These men were arrested, not for a crime, not for violence, but simply for being themselves. Look at their expressions: defiance, pride, maybe even fear hidden behind a forced smile. Back then, society treated homosexuality as something to punish, something to erase. Yet, even in captivity, they posed for this picture, as if saying, "We exist. We will not hide." Decades later, this image isn't just history. It's a reminder of courage in the face of oppression. What do you see in their eyes, shame or strength? Take a closer look at this. These are roller skates, but not like any you've ever seen. The year? 1910. The dream? To revolutionize personal transportation. Instead of sleek wheels, these early skates were clunky contraptions of metal rods and chains, closer to miniature bicycles than modern skates. Imagine balancing on those. Back then, inventors believed this was the future of mobility. No cars, no traffic, just people rolling down the streets like human machines. But here's the twist. They never caught on. Why? Too heavy, too slow, too dangerous. Yet, this photo is proof of humanity's endless obsession with innovation, even when it looks absolutely bizarre. Would you dare try these skates today? What you're looking at is not a modern dive. It's history being made. The year? 1899. This grainy, almost ghostly image is the first photograph ever taken underwater. No oxygen tanks, no sleek gear, just a heavy copper helmet, weighted boots, and a lifeline of hoses. Imagine descending into dark, freezing waters with technology that barely existed. The risk? Immense. One wrong move and the diver could drown instantly. Yet, this moment captured something humanity had never seen before. A glimpse of an unknown world beneath the surface. Over a century later, this photo still feels haunting and heroic. Would you dare to take that first step into the deep? What if your morning commute looked like this? In 1910, a few inventive minds took bicycles and turned them into rail-riding machines. No engines, no fuel, just pure human power gliding along the tracks. It was the perfect hack for remote areas where trains were scarce, but the rails stretched for miles. But imagine the risk. What if a rail train came barreling toward you? No brakes strong enough, no escape route, just steel rails and split-second decisions. These riders weren't just commuting. They were daring fate with every pedal stroke. Would you take a ride on this death-defying invention, or stick to the regular road? Take a look at this photograph, an extravagant wedding banquet from 1923, frozen in time. Notice the endless U-shaped table stretching across a grand ballroom. Every detail screams elegance and opulence. But behind the glamour, imagine the whispers. Prohibition was in full swing, jazz was rewriting the rules, and the roaring 20s were about to hit their peak. Guests likely hid flasks under tuxedos, while champagne flowed in secret. This isn't just a wedding. It's a snapshot of an era obsessed with style, rebellion, and excess. If you could step into this room for just one night, would you dance to the jazz or sip from the hidden flask? This photo captures an intense moment from 1923, a car speeding through the streets, trailed by two determined police officers on motorcycles. But here's the twist. That thick smoke pouring from the vehicle? It's not an accident. It was a classic trick used by getaway drivers during the Prohibition era to blind their pursuers. Imagine the roar of those engines, the smell of gasoline, and the chaos as law enforcement tried to keep up on dusty roads. In an age before radios, before modern tactics, every chase was a gamble. Would you bet on the car or the cops on two wheels? This black and white ad hides a billion-dollar empire. In 1968, a small hut with a bold sign opened its doors in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Their promise? Fresh pizza, draft beer, and a phone number to call ahead. No apps, no delivery trackers, just pure, old-school service. Nobody then imagined this humble spot would spark a global phenomenon, changing how the world eats forever. It all started here, with one tiny building, a dream, and the irresistible power of pizza. Who knew history could taste this good? Take a look at these men. No flashy sneakers, no million-dollar contracts, just raw passion and a leather ball. This photo from 1910 shows a college basketball team when the game was still young, a far cry from today's high-speed, high-stakes sport. Back then, the rules were rough, the uniforms simple, and every point was a battle. Imagine playing without shot clocks, without three-pointers, just pure grit. This is where basketball's journey began, and it all started with teams like this. What on earth is happening here? This isn't rugby, and it's definitely not soccer. Welcome to the wild world of pushball, a bizarre sport from the early 1900s where two teams fought to move a giant 6-foot ball across the field. Invented to test strength, endurance, and pure chaos, these games often turned into massive scrums. No pads, no helmets, just raw force. Imagine being crushed under that ball. It didn't last long, but for a moment in history, this strange spectacle had crowds roaring. Would you dare to play? Look closely at this picture, a boy and his dog, frozen in time over a century ago. No phones, no screens, just loyalty and trust. In 1920, life was harder, simpler, and friendships like this were everything. That gentle paw on his arm, it says more than words ever could. A silent promise. I'm with you. Through wars, poverty, and uncertainty, moments like this gave people hope. Do you think we've lost this kind of pure connection today? Or can we still learn something from a boy and his best friend? Take a look at this photo. A man stands proudly by his ice cream cart in the streets of Mexico, 1957. No fancy branding, no delivery apps, just pure craftsmanship and hard work. Notice the cones stacked perfectly, the handwritten name on the cart, Helados Reyes. For many kids, this wasn't just ice cream. It was happiness on wheels, the sound of a bell signaling joy after a long day. Back then, 5 cents could buy you a taste of sweetness and a memory to last a lifetime. Tell me, if this cart rolled by your street today, would you stop for a scoop? Look closely at this photo. It's Mexico, 1958. The country is at a crossroads, and these citizens hold the power in their hands, one ballot at a time. No electronic machines, no instant results, just paper, ink, and trust. For many, this was more than voting. It was a rare chance to shape the future in a time when democracy was still fragile. Notice the faces, some hopeful, some skeptical, others just tired of promises. What would they think if they knew that decades later, the fight for fair elections would still make headlines? History repeats itself, and this image is proof. So, here's a question for you. Do you think voting today carries the same weight it did back then?